And now let's get on with the show, The Ties That Bind. In the first two tales, you will join young descendants of the featured characters as they hear their ancestors' stories read by another family member. And then, as if you were a shopper in the 1920s at J.B. Mann's store in Company, you will eavesdrop on a conversation between two lifelong friends. But first, we'll be introduced to Miss Donna Clark Taylor, who is attending a Cruz family gathering and has found a young child who wants to hear the story about her ancestors, Squire Piety Cruz. Let's welcome them to the stage.
So Carly, I am so happy that you want me to read this book to you. I'm glad that you could come to the reunion today. Wasn't that a good meal? What was your favorite thing? Oh, good. I like the banana pudding. This is a story about our ancestor. His name is Squire A. Cruz, noble Tyler County pioneer, rooted in faith, family, and hard work. Squire was born in 1796 when Tejas stood wild and scrappy. Young Cruz began his life of adventure in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. His American roots held strong and true. Grandpa fought for Virginia's soil. Revolutionary battles came and went, but God's grace repaid that toil. Strong and handsome, Squire grew as a man, a farmer and blacksmith by trade. Wanderlust lured him to rivers and rafts, to Tennessee, where a new home he made. An honest day's work for an honest day's pay. Squire looked at each task, then did it. That ethic paid off when he wanted to court the lovely Miss Piety Pruitt. At a Baptist church supper, he met the sweet lass, so slender, dainty, and demure, her eyes like pools lined with golden fall leaves, soft brown, reflecting light with allure. In 1819, she became his bride. Together, they managed their farm. First came John, called Jack, then two more sons, making the home happy and warm. Now, in the 1820s, Tejas remained untamed, but thrilling yarns did abound. Rich farmland, low prices enticed brave investors. Wild game was plenteous all round. Such accounts caught Squire's adventurous spirit, but Piety declined to go. In time, she relinquished. They planned for the journey. First the harvest, then westward ho. Then a dream spread fear into Piety's heart. Oh, wait, she began to rave. I saw our raft wrecked, our children drowned, the Mississippi a watery grave. So, sadly, the trek to Tejas died with the dream. As time went by, Piety's fears grew dim. Squire's hope sprouted brave new seeds, and the Cruz family added 3 little girls, while Tejas tales blossomed like weeds. At last, a wagon stood packed to the brim, 2 mules hitched up for the trip, a cow, 6 children, and Mom and Dad struck out for the great Mississippi. 'Twas the fall of 1833. Squire's troop reached the muddy riverside. There, they camped to construct their floating home, and load up their goods for the ride. With mules and wagon, children and cow, Squire cast off and hugged the east bank. Father and sons took turns on the poles, while the distance to Tejas shrank. They could float down to Vicksburg to board a real ship, headed west for the shoreline of sand, and then roll along to the Sabine riverbank, gateway to the promised land. Moonlight and dark clouds took turns in the sky. Lunging logs caught their boat unaware. Fierce impact, bonds shattered, raft flying asunder. Dark water held most in its snare. See, there's Jack, and there's Piety, and someone. Jack rescued his mom, and Squire survived. Piety's nightmare, alas, did repeat. All 5 young bodies recovered, laid to rest, wrapped with kindness in homespun sheets. Merciful angels in a lone cabin atop the bank gave promise to attend each small grave. A cedar tree planted at the head of each mound stood for decades, faithful and brave. What to do? Where to go? Turn homeward or forge ahead? Squire gently put the question to Piety. With grief-stricken hearts, they made a clean start to Tejas with help from the Almighty. And Squire wrote back home and said, "We have no reason to go back, so we are headed west again." In March of 1834, again, the cruise expedition set out with new wagon and fanciful cast iron stove, fresh supplies and tools too, no doubt. At first, Bevel District and a labor of land. 'Twas good, but not the best. The Wolf Creek settlement offered more, a league of land to test. Quite sure that Wolf Creek was his final home, Squire took care to build each part. Log cabin and smokehouse, barn and pens, he formed each structure with heart. Now, Tejas presented a fertile land of riches, but fear drained much of the fun. A cruel Mexican government threatened the peace. Many settlers wanted to run. Ben Milam requested volunteers for a fight to remove Santa Anna the gold. Squire Cruz and Sam Belt replied to the call. Others joined the muster roll. Leaving Piety, Jack, and new baby William, Squire took off to defend his new land. 'Twas 1836, the Alamo fell. Dark days were surely at hand. "You must run, run away," Piety heeded the shouts. Food left on her stove, fire red. Jack gathered their neighbor with her newborn babe, gentle horse, babe in basket, they all fled. A rider reached the travelers, for they spotted the Sabine. "Turn back, good news from out yon. Sam Houston and his men have defeated the foe. Texas' war for independence is won." Ah, peace at last, and time for his land. Squire's blessings stacked up quite tall. Another baby daughter came in a year. Clementine brought joy to all. And Clementine is my great-great-great-grandmother. And my daddy was named after her. His middle name was Clementine. Years of prosperity marched along. 2 more daughters added their sound. Squire's service in war earned another league of land. Near Woodville, he broke new ground. For Squire's final foray away in battle, he joined the Mexican-American War. His efforts there earned a lifetime pension for service in fields near and afar. Now, 3 more sons have been born to the union of Squire and Piety Cruz, counting 5 tragic deaths, 13 children all told, each one considered good news. In 1877, Squire Cruz took final rest. His 81 years made a mark. Through tragedy, war, and glorious peace, he kept his adventurous spark. With dreams of visiting family back home, Piety, too, faced adventure head-on. Aboard the iron horse full of clatter and smoke, she passed her sweet children, now gone. And see, now the 5 little bitty trees have grown into big, giant trees. His descendants are many, his legacy strong, and his final resting place can be found in the Cruz Cemetery near his beloved Wolf Creek, with his loved ones placed all around. A fitting epithet marks his grave, the noblest work of God, an honest man. And if you look at the map here, we are here in Woodville, and if you go towards Jasper, there is the cemetery right in there. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed it.
Thank you, Donna. That was wonderful. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like for you to meet Miss Betty Ann Barnes Whitworth. Now, Miss Betty Ann is a descendant of James Barnes of the Mount Hope community. And she is going to tell us a story about the Pathfinder. Would you come on?
Glad that you came with me tonight. Didn't we have a beautiful day today? And wasn't that food delicious? Yes, it was wonderful. And there's a lot of people here that are related to us. They're kin to us. And I'm going to tell you a story about your great, 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 great grandfather. It's a lot of greats, isn't it? His name was James Barnes. And I just happened to have a book about him. So I'm going to read it to you tonight, okay? James Barnes, the Pathfinder. Born in 1781 in a fort in North Carolina, Barnes' life began among revolutionaries. Seeing less of what was and more of what could be, he lived among bold visionaries. Such vision led to Mississippi Territory. Wed to Tabitha, he established a home. Their family grew. 9 children, 11 slaves. On the wilderness edge, they could be on. His trading expedition took weeks, maybe months, leaving Tabitha and children alone. Most Native Americans became friendly with Barnes, while some had a worrisome time. Such warrior-like great caught Tabitha unaware. They captured and carried her away. At their camp, They required her to join their war dance under white scalps. They forced her to sway. Then a parley with James, friendly Indians, and the braves, Tabitha's release they had deftly secured. His family reunited, James turned thoughts toward the west. Tejas wonders, opportunities ensured. On October 6, 1836, son Samuel spoke words of promise. With Lucinda, he delighted to repeat wedding vows, and their home would remain in Ole Miss. Next day, James struck the immigrant trail. Old Choctaw territory left behind. Off to settle the West like a sacred duty, the frontier consumed his mind. Family would follow later, but slaves were eager to go. They set out for the distant river shore. The slaves stood free, but needing safety out west, they declared themselves bonded once more. First settling along the Angelina River, Barnes earned himself a new name. He killed 14 wildcats at one time. Thus all said, Panther matched and conquered wild game. They called your grandfather Panther. In 1837, following Texas Revolution, defeated Mexicans took their lead. Barnes scouted farther west in virgin pine forest. Cobble Prairie soon tugged at his sleeve. A letter to Tabitha set the wheels in motion. With family in tow, except for Sam and Lucindy, she set out. Her treasured gold savings she carefully hid. They needed in Texas, no doubt. When camped, she slept with a prized coin collection. One day, hastily packing, she forgot it. Bill backtracked to search. All lost. Off to Texas without it. Some time went by. Sam and Lucindy paid a visit. How Tabitha's heart leapt with pride as she sighted the covered wagon approaching her home. At last, her son by her side. The timing of Sam's visit overlapped other guests. A Methodist camp meeting congregation. 2 Englishmen conducted a famous revival. Mount Hope Church launched its new reputation. In Katy, in Georgia, your mother and daddy got married at Mount Hope Church. There, Aunt Mary, the venerable white-haired Negro slave, prepared the meal with much grace. Cornbread and collard. She served with aplomb, just like antebellum days. Sam and Lucindy returned to Mississippi to continue their household thence, but fond memories of family and Mount Hope's bounty brought them back to stay 6 years hence. Now the folk of Peachtree Village in Mount Hope were hard-working, neighborly, and kind. They assisted the drovers on the famous Old Beef Trail from San Antonio to the Sabine and beyond. With scant official government except the East Texas Code, the law of the rifle ruled the land. Horse thieves and robbers in those isolated communities sadly lynched at the locals' hand. Each household grew what it took to survive, plus cash crops, mostly cotton and corn. Steamboats on the Trinity took those goods to market. after wagons crossed trails well worn. Brenda, they did just like you and Daddy did the other day when you planted the garden. They planted their gardens. Burial of Lucinda Barnes Rotan was as she requested, with the first log cabin in sight. Under quaint crepe myrtle, her place of prayer, thus Mount Hope Cemetery received its plight. Loving family continued to pause near that tree. One by one, they added new markers, expressing their faith in God we trust. Truly, this is God's 3.6 acres. And girls, those words are written on the red building in Mount Hope Cemetery. You've been there, haven't you? Yes, I've seen it before. Slaves and masters alike buried there, each one taking final rest, whether working on earth or praising in heaven, shared lives going forth at their best. James shared Sam's vision of a grist mill on Russell Creek. Millstones ordered from Germany came to Galveston, then rolled home by oxen strong. Corn mill ground for all, aplenty. Almost 2 decades passed after James Barnes' death before orphan Katie came through. This was a railroad, Katie, not a girl like you. The railroad then linked Comus Mill in Trinity, missing Peachtree and Mount Hope too. The depot at Chester created a new town. Masons and schools moved there. But at Peachtree Village and Mount Hope Community, there remained an abundance of fresh air. Now, with a sturdy rifle and sturdy hands, James Barnes had defended his homeland, celebrated as one of the company of men who built this country. Understand? A man well described in J.F. Cooper's tales, dauntless, sturdy, God-fearing, in the style of pioneer Daniel Boone, pathfinder, modest, enduring. James Barnes, born in a North Carolina fort in 1781, died at Mount Hope, Texas, 1863. His mission to establish schools and churches in farthest reaches of civilization. His advice, cultivate good soil, practice conservation. Remember, honest work is always rewarded. You like that story, girls? Yes, it was a good story.
Thank you, Betty Ann. Thank you, children. That Sam was a genius, don't you think? How do you suppose he knew that the best millstones came from Germany? Maybe he read the Galveston Daily News. And how long do you think it took him to drive those oxen to Galveston and back with no interstate highways or even paved roads for that matter? Finally, ladies and gentlemen, let's go to the front porch of J.B. Mann, the J.B. Mann store, where Reverend Sam Mann waits for us, and maybe for a surprise visit from his longtime friend, Mr. John Henry Kirby, the Prince of the Pines.
Well, bless my soul. Look at here. It is my old friend, John Henry Kirby, coming up here in his bright, shiny new car. John Henry, come up here. Sit down. bring me up to date on everything about Peachtree Building.
Well, it's good to see you, Brother Sam. I'll take up your offer here.
Sit down. I'll challenge you to a game of checkers while we listen.
I'll just look forward to that. But you know, Sam, times have really changed since we were boys behind a mule and a plow.
Yes, they surely have, John Henry. And one of the things that I remember was riding into town to buy my very first pair of store-bought pants.
You know, I guess that railroad had a lot to do with all those changes.
Oh yes, the railroad brought us whistle, whiz, and bang. But you know, John Henry, it has really made a difference when I have to go all the way down to Warren to preach. It's eased up my life considerably.
Yeah, and finally all the good folks around Peachtree and Mount Hope can realize that all those pine trees are good for something other than clearing for their corn and cotton crops. Now those pesky pines can be turned right into lumber and shipped all the way to Houston.
Well, that's true. But also think about Galveston. Galveston is our window to the world. Our products go out of Galveston, and then goods come back from Galveston all over everywhere in East Texas. John Henry, would you believe that my son, right here in Pomonil, Texas, carries fine china dishes that are imported all the way from England? John, you can buy fine English china in Pomonil, Texas. Think about that. John, I know that the Katy Railroad brought all kinds of changes into our world. But it changed things other than just the railroad. I remember in the olden days, our children got all the education they would ever need in those one-room schoolhouses that were scattered all over Tyler County. There was one in Mobile, there was Sunnydale, there was Emily, and they were just everywhere.
Yeah, and I know that Aunt Saul was mighty happy when the railroad came to town. You know, Aunt Saul could put her children on the train and send them all the way to Spurger. And there in Spurger, they went to classes with P.I. Hunter. And you know, P.I. taught all those 14 classes that a person needed to take the teacher test. Even Latin, they took Latin. Yeah, Aunt Saul, she learned a lot from her mother. Her mother taught her the value of a good education, and Aunt Saul is passing it right down to her children. You married a good woman, Sam.
That I did. But also, that Sunnydale school served as our church at Sunnydale. We used that schoolhouse for years and years and years until we were able to build our new church in 1913. John, I was the very first pastor of the Sunnydale Church, and I was the first name listed in the Sunnydale Church directory. We built that new church in 1913. It was built entirely of Tyler County virgin pine. And my father-in-law, David Enlow, handpicked every board to go into that new church from his very own sawmill. Now, John, do you remember Martha Clyburn Stirrup? Well, Martha Clyburn Stirrup was the very first person, the first convert that I ever baptized into the faith. Now, Martha Sturrock was baptized in a creek known as the Big Dry Creek. Now, Big Dry Creek, that's a crazy name for a creek, isn't it? But let me tell you, the day that I baptized Martha Sturrock in the Big Dry Creek, that creek was both wet and cold.
Yeah, but the thing I remember most about that church is how you all churched people were doing something they weren't supposed to do, like dancing and gambling and trading horses on Sunday.
Well, that's true. But first, before we let them back in, they had to stand in front of the congregation and confess their sins and ask for forgiveness. But these things didn't happen very often.
But you know, Brother Sam, with all that begging for forgiveness came a man's promise that he had never do the forbidden thing again. You know, I think a man's word was worth more then than it probably is today. Back then, a man knew that in order to be respected and get along in the world, he had to keep his promises.
That's true, John. I remember the days when a promise was just equivalent to something being done. You could trust a man to keep his promises. Once, when I was just a boy, my father got into some trouble about drinking too much moonshine whiskey with Sam Houston. Now, Sam Houston knew how to drink. But about that same time, my father got word that 3 of my older brothers had died of disease in the war between the states, or as some people still like to call it, the War of Northern Aggression. But in any case, my father was so very sad and upset about this that he made a promise that he would never, ever take another drop of moonshine whiskey or hard liquor. And he kept that promise. He kept that promise for the rest of his life.
Well, you know, your father got to Texas during the early days of the Republic, when usually about all a man had when he came was his word and his gun and his horse and the clothes on his back. He could have probably settled anywhere he wanted to, but he picked the land around China Hill, which had good fertile soil, and it had all that spring-fed water to water his crops. No wonder he was made one of our first postmasters.
Well, my father was a very smart man. Now, John, some people thought that he was as mean as a rattlesnake. But Father always carried a sharp knife, a pistol, and a rifle wherever he went. But my father was a very kind man, and he only got fierce and upset when he felt like that his family or his property was in danger. Father has gone on to his heavenly reward now, and it probably won't be long before I join him there. Some people sing about standing on Jordan's stormy banks and looking wistfully across the Jordan River to the peaceful land of Canaan. But not me. I think that the banks of the Jordan are just as peaceful as that happy land where all my possessions lie. I have preached the Word of God throughout this entire area, most of Southeast Texas. I have traveled from one end to the other through our beautiful pine and dogwood forest. I have baptized more people than I can remember. And I have sincerely believed the gospel truth of the messages that I have preached. I have tried to live my entire life in a way that when I encountered somebody who had never known Christ, that they were able to find Christ through knowing me. And the day will come, probably not too long from now, when my work on this earth is done, and my Master will come and take me home to a land of peace and rest.
You know, Brother Sam, you've probably baptized more people around here than just about any preacher around. Well, I bet you baptized someone in every creek in Tyler County.
Probably so.
But you know, the favorite baptism that I ever saw meant so much to me. It was when you baptized my father, John T. Kirby. That event so warmed me and meant so much to me that I found an artist to do a painting of that baptism for me. And now that painting hangs in the hall that I built to honor my parents at Peachtree Village.
That's wonderful, John. It looks like that you have totally cleaned my plow in the checker game tonight.
Well, I did my best.
But I look forward to you coming back. I thoroughly enjoyed whiling away the afternoon with you. And I look forward to you coming back and visiting with me. And I'll challenge you again to play checkers. And that time, I'm going to win.
Oh, don't you worry, Brother Sam. I'll be back. But for right now, I'll just leave with a fond memory of that baptism, when at my father's baptism, when I remember people singing that great American hymn, Amazing Grace.
Say
Thank you so much. That was beautiful. That's one of my favorite songs. I love that. Y'all did great. Thank you very much. I want to take a second to recognize the authors and illustrators of these great books that we enjoyed tonight. Miss Donna Clark, Miss Melinda Stryker, and Sarah Gentz, who is a student at SFA. Can we please give them a round of applause? Now, there is no doubt that Tyler County pioneer families had a deep understanding of the ties that bind. They left us a legacy that was rooted in faith, that was rooted in family and hard work. They challenged us to become pathfinders. They inspired us to seek ways to help others while not taking ourselves too seriously.